Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Terra Prime Live. Today, we're going to be talking about fitness for sabering. So if no matter what you're doing this for, whether it be performance, sports, anything like that, this is going to come in handy for you. If you're a beginner or if you're an expert or if you're a coach, anything like this, hopefully there'll be some good information here for you to check out. Joining me on the panel today, we've got our friend Ben Judkins, Daniel Mrotz, how's it going? Our friend Jared and Deso Faulkner from Gulf Coast Sabers down in Florida. So, hello, gentlemen. We will be basically going through some stuff, basically just some basic good framework for what you want to look for in the exercises that you choose to prepare yourself for sabering. What we'll be talking about today are conditioning exercises. These are not technique, so we'll use the saber for some things, but not for sabering. Okay, so this is all stuff that is done outside of your normal martial arts practice. Okay, so this is just the conditioning stuff. So just the body stuff. Let's see. So we will go through a couple of that kind of stuff. Please ask questions on the chat, and we will try to get to them as we go through here. So we will get going here. So any hoot. All right. So first off, when people start anything like this, I think we should make a delineation first of all. Like I said, we're not doing technique stuff. And what that means is there is a conditioning aspect to all martial arts, right? In Chinese martial arts, it's often called Qigong. In other martial arts, it's, they just throw it in. In modern times, you just go to the gym and you do your work, right? So this is stuff that's applicable to everybody. Well, it's, a lot of these will be universal rules of thumb. You always want to remember that everybody is just a little bit different. So just like any other scientific endeavor, there are no exact answers. There's always going to be a range. There's going to be high percentage and low percentage, this, that, and the other. And I think what happens a lot of times is we lose sight of, just taking care of our body and taking care of that kind of stuff for the fighting, for the forms, for whatever we're doing. So starting out, let's talk a little bit about kind of where just warming up here. Okay, so we talked a little bit about warming up last week. What I'm going to be talking about here, there's different ways that we can warm up, right? The reason you warm up, and I'm going to use a different term. I don't like using the term warm up. It's a little antiquated. It's not really, indicative of what you're doing. I call it movement prep, right? What you want to do is you want to basically prep your movement before you start adding resistance to it, whether that be effort or, or whatever. So like if you're doing something before a fight, we say run through some of your, your basic movements, right? Just, relaxedly. You don't want to tire yourself out. In this case, if you're doing something like a strength move, go ahead and do a couple of them unweighted, right? So you don't put any weight on there, or you put very, very little weight on there. We'll get to that kind of thing when we get into the strength thing. But basically, the point is when you get injured at the beginning of a workout or within a workout, if it's a muscle strain or pull, that has to do with something that happened that your body wasn't expecting, right? So when we're dealing with weight, and we're dealing with movements in cardio and building those things, we want to be very, very careful of that. We're not trying to equalize everything like we are in training, right? So if we are trying to, lift something, we want to make it heavy. right? If we want to build our cardio, we want to challenge that cardio, right? Before we do that, we just want to make sure that, kind of everything's all in place. We'll go through specific things that you can do for each of these things here in a moment. Before we go on, is there anybody who wants to add anything to that discussion as of yet?
So just a quick question for you, Chad, to kind of frame
Yeah.
everything.
Yes.
But I got into sabering to make me more fit. Doesn't just generally attending practice suffice for general fitness? Why would I need to pay attention to this as a separate endeavor?
That is a good question. So what happens when we do technique, like when we're doing sabering? Yes, there is a specific amount of cardio that we can build from it. There's a specific amount of strength and movement and all of that kind of stuff that comes indicative and just comes with practicing martial art, practicing weapons or anything like that. The issue is that when you want to build, when you want to get stronger past a certain point, right? Doing all of those things kind of at once may not be the best thing for you to do, right? A lot of times we have imbalances in the body. We'll have a lack of strength. We'll have a lack of flexibility or a range of motion, whichever you want to talk about, right? And so if there's something that we can't do in our practice or in our martial art, then we want to have some way of building this stuff outside of that. Also, the methodologies are a little bit different when we want to build these strengths, and all of this stuff we're going to apply directly to that sport. But that's, as you will see, the two ways of training are a little bit different. So that would be my basic one. Does anybody else have anything to add to?
General Sun isn't here, but Damon Honeycutt's metaphor that I always really liked is, well, just imagine yourself as a D&D character, right? So often what we do in practice, that's skill points, that's skill development, but wouldn't it be nice to get those basic stats up?
Right. Yes, exactly. Very good. Always welcoming a good D&D metaphor. So yeah. So there you go. Okay.
How about character age, Chad? I find, like, as I get more and more decrepit, I'm, every year the students come in and they're 19 and I'm a year older. So I have discovered in the last few years a fairly major difference between the types of conditioning or strength and flexibility that I feel the students need to be doing, who are young people, and that I myself need to be doing. And to be really simple about it, like, students can do high reps of medium loads, and I should do like 3 reps of really heavy loads. And I don't want to wear out what little cartilage I have in my joints. So the role of being the coach and who your population is, I think, also really factors into this. And yeah,
it does. One of the things I'll be talking about, I'm going to be putting stuff up there that's going to specifically talk about these particular things, because there are some things that we do, especially as young people, that are A, ineffective, B, injurious, and C, just ridiculous, right? So, and one of these things, I'll start this out with a good little controversy here, and we'll get to it when we get into the bodyweight exercises, but sit-ups and crunches, right? Worst exercise ever, right? Number one, it's not going to strengthen your abs or your core. It will actually probably weaken it if we're going to judge it on what the core does, which we'll get into in a moment, right? But the reason people do them a lot and people swear by them is because you feel them, right? It's like, oh yeah, it hurts. That's got to be doing something, right? No, just because it hurts doesn't mean it's doing anything. And I've always said to people, if you really want that feeling in your abs, I can do it for you in 2 seconds by giving you a couple of big, like, swift shots to the gut, right? Same feeling. And actually the same benefit, and probably more, because as anybody who does, Daniel, in like Baji, there's all these hitting of the abs and stuff like that that's getting them to tense up. So you want to be able to give a class that has lots of different people, because like if you come to a family class, right, you're going to have parents and kids kind of operating together. The kids are going to be able to do more than the adults, almost always, right? That doesn't mean they're going to do it well, but there are certain things that you can do that you can give young people that aren't going to cause the bad habits. Now, one of the things that will go in here, because I want to talk about overuse injury and give a little bit of an introduction to periodization. One of the things that is a big plague upon the United States fitness industry is bodybuilding protocol. Most of the way people lift weights is based on a protocol which is meant to cause what we call sarcoplasmic hypertrophy in the muscles to make them bigger, look better, and all of that kind of thing. Problem is it's not really that sustainable a method. As you said, Daniel, that you wear out your joints pretty quick doing those high reps, right? The basic rule of thumb is if you have you build strength through low weight, low rep, or high weight, low reps. You build endurance with low weight, high reps. When we say low weight, we mean much lower than that. But that's the thing. So you can take any exercise and increase its difficulty for different people. For instance, I will usually start people out with wall squats, facing the wall squats, which we'll go into and everything like that. With kids, I will usually have them start off with pistol squats, right? Pistol squats are a great exercise. They're very difficult for adults who have not done them when they were kids, but for kids, their nervous system isn't quite, it's much more malleable, so they can get those ranges of motion in the hip and the knee and the ankle to the point where they can do it much, much easier. If you install it in them at that age, then as they grow and develop, that pattern persists and they are able to do it far into adulthood. When you're like me, who learned how to do it after that, then any little injury will completely take that skill away from you. So that's one of the benefits. Now, what I'm saying about periodization, and I'm sure people have different variations of this, is we say to avoid overusing our joints or our muscles or anything like that, we are going to change what we do based on specific times, right? Now, this includes layoffs. So this includes doing nothing, like completely resting, right? Just going out and doing your sport or playing another sport or going on bike rides and just being generally active, but not doing any physical conditioning. During those layoffs, which are like a week to 2 weeks, that's when your body makes those adaptations. And when you come back, you tend to be stronger, more flexible, all of that kind of thing. If you don't take those layoffs, your body starts to get into problems with endocrine depletion and exhaustion and fatigue. And then you start fighting yourself to do that. And that's going to slow pretty much all of your progress. Won't completely stop it, but it will definitely slow it. Now, the most common way they do this is, like leg day. Oh, today's a chest day. I don't do that. Every day is a full body day, but I'll work on different stuff. One day I'll work on strength. So I'll be doing, probably mostly deadlifts, really heavy deadlifts, right? And when I do deadlifts, and we'll go into this in the protocol, all that kind of stuff, I'm doing very few reps, right? So I'm doing like 3 to 5 reps at a time, right? And then every now and then I'll peak up to my 1 rep max, right? Where I can just do this. And then between those, I take lots of rest. to do that. That's an example of kind of periodization. There's ways that you can then raise your weight, all that kind of stuff, kind of in the thing. And then on another day, I'll do my flexibility. All right. So I'll work on my range of motion and going through my, stretches and qigong and all of the stuff that's for my mobility and all of that. And then other days I'll just do cardio, right? Or some little different, right? I'll do deadlifts on one day. I'll do kettlebell swings on another day. I'll do get-ups on another day. With a kettlebell, I can do lots of different things on all kinds of days. But the point is I'm not putting my body through the exact same paces over and over and over again, increasing that tension, because that's just going to wear me down after a while. So spacing things out and making sure that you're looking at that, as well as taking rests, are two of my big ones for periodization. Anybody else have anything they want to go there? I know everybody has their own little tips and tricks for that kind of thing.
Chad, I suppose I'd ask, if people are meeting in a Saber, I mean, who knows what people are doing right now, because our world is transformed. But imagine you go to Saber class twice a week for an hour and a half. In order, like, I imagine myself as some kind of minor professional. So on top of training with a sword, I'll go to the gym, and I have day 1 and day 2. So I'll go on Mondays and Thursdays and lift quite heavy things, slightly different parameters. And then 2 other days of the week, I'll work on basically my middle split or front split and various leg related, not getting over decrepitude activities that are flexible. Like, so I don't think I can expect that of everyone who's training twice a week, that they would add 4 other days a week that are kind of the athletic shell to support the activity. So what's the most effective way? Like, if we can imagine people are coming to Saber class twice a week, do we suppose they have some other physical activity that they're doing every day? Do we suggest it? Do we think, hey, here's 20 minutes in the morning, here's 40 minutes in the afternoon, like, see if you can add things in? What's your big picture, or your picture of somebody's week coming in as an enthusiast who may not know all of these athletic parameters?
That really depends on somebody's own goals and everything like that, right? Like, if you're wanting to get into this and you want to, go to France and compete in lightsaber in the FFE thing, right? You're probably going to be much more motivated to add a lot more of that stuff, right? If you're just, I'm doing the Saber class to stay fit, then no, you don't really have to do, much of anything, unless, you just want to be very, very careful about what you're doing. Now that's where your coach is going to come in, right? And so we're also talking to coaches out there. Make sure that your people are, know this kind of stuff and know the risks. But if you're alone and you want to take on some of this stuff, right, we'll go into some stuff which is really easy that you can do and that you can integrate into your daily routine fairly easily. Because quite frankly, you don't need to take out a special time to work out, right? You can do little workouts throughout the day, and that's going to have, sometimes, depending on what it is, a greater effect on your athletic ability for that whole reason. So especially for like range of motion joints, it's not how many reps you do, but how many times you do it in the day, right? So your body starts to expect that of itself, right? But and then there's everything in between, right? You're probably going to want to, if you're starting out from nothing and you're, above 35, right? More than likely, you're going to get into practice and something's going to start to hurt, right? And this is the kind of stuff that will help stop that from hurting and prevent other stuff from hurting. For people who want to like really, supercharge everything, there's a way that you can take all of this and make it, Russian Spetsnaz level difficult. So there you go. So that's kind of the basics on that there. Now, one thing I wanted to mention real quick before we get into strength versus flexibility and cardio and all that kind of stuff is breathing. Nobody in the West talks about breathing when they're talking about this. They give you these basic little, inhale here and exhale there, right? There's a lot more to it. And it really is important for you to get it right, to get the most out of things. I think a lot of people are finding out how inadequate their breathing is now because they're wearing a mask. And for a lot of people, that's causing, a lot of problems. Now, it doesn't need to, because, well, it just doesn't need to. Most of the time when people are breathing heavy, they're going to start to breathe through their mouth, right? It's just a natural kind of thing, and they start gulping in, right? Now, what you want to do is you want to try to completely like resist that urge and breathe in through the nose. If you're getting out of breath, one of those things that can help you calm your breath down is holding it, right? You inhale really deep, you hold it for a couple of seconds, and then you let it go real slow, right? And that's going to help the oxygen CO2 mixture kind of regulate a little bit, and it's going to calm you down a little bit more, right? If your breathing is off, you will notice that your strength will decrease, right? So breathing is important. If all you can remember is, inhale as you contract, exhale as you, extend, fine. But you really want to try to move it down into your lower abdomen so that when you, let me try to get the belly cam on here. There you go. So when I inhale right here, this expands and then it pushes it out again, right? Okay. We try to keep the chest as still as we can, right? And move everything kind of below here. That's going to really get your core fired up. It's going to start everything like this, and try to do it kind of in a standing position or a lying down position. If you're lying down, there's two ways to do it. You can put two objects, one on your belly, one on your chest, and try to only make the one on your belly rise or move. Or you can flip over and do a yoga thing called crocodile breath, whereas when you inhale, you push your stomach into the ground, and when you exhale, you hollow it out to make a space, right? Both of those things, if you practice that breathing, right, will have a pretty large effect on your performance, more than most people will expect. And it's a very, very easy thing to do before you even get to any other strength or body weight or anything like that. If you get this dialed in, you've got a lot of your problems solved right there, just from the breathing. Thoughts?
Totally the best advice I ever got. Only ever breathe through your nose. 2 or 3 years of feeling like you're choking, but after that, infinite endurance. Really, really, it was part of my initial training in Chinese martial arts. Close your mouth, breathe through your nose, unless you're making a sound that goes with a particular strike or something.
Right.
So
And actually, yeah, and it's pretty much just focus on the inhale, right? You can breathe out through either the nose or the mouth. And in fact, when you're really panting, if you concentrate on the exhale, right, and sniffing in through that, you can get a lot more. You won't gas, as quickly.
I don't know if you've seen this, Chad, but this is originally a French book, and there's a wonderful first one that's pretty famous called Anatomy of Movement that she did, and this is the anatomy of breathing, and it gives an awful lot of geeked out information to do with what you just said. So I would advise getting a hold of this. Obviously, it's not going to, put you through your own paces, but it is a really good supplement to what you just were talking about.
Yeah.
Another science-based recent publication I'd like to mention is James Nestor, Nestor, just recently came out with a book called Breath, the New Science of a Lost Art, that has a lot of the latest, as Daniel says, very geeky stuff in there. It's pretty great, but that also further provides information regarding breathe through your nose, breathe through your nose.
Yes.
As somebody that's done mass combats, that kind of thing, looking around at the people who are being gassed, like you said, those are the ones that are heaving, that are gulping in great quantities. Those that are focused and breathing through the nose are the ones that are still standing.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, the with the masks thing, I've noticed, because I work in a gym and I can see, who knows how to who knows how to wear one of these and who doesn't, right? If you're wearing it and you're feeling like it's like suffocating you, you're probably breathing through your mouth, and you can see this on the gym floor because you can see the people going the mask going in and then out and then in and then out, and that's obviously going to cause that kind of thing. But that's a different thing. Breath is a very, very important. Yes.
We have a question coming in from Twitter via Roberto regarding, and I think this is more related to our previous point, but would sprinkling smaller fitness events throughout the day, for example, 30 to 40 push-ups every hour on the hour, so basically greasing the groove, would that be better, beneficial in some way other than longer normal training sessions?
Sometimes for like push-ups, I recommend only doing 10 at a time, right? I don't see much of a use to do more than 10 in a row. If you want to do, a bunch of them, like intermittent, do 10 push-ups, do 10 something else, do 10 push-ups, anything. But yes, one of the ways, and I'm going to be having to do this myself because I'm coming off of quarantine, one way that you get that you can learn your one-legged squat or your one-arm push-up is by doing just that, doing one of them throughout the day, like anytime you think about it, right? And you can use that with any of these bodyweight exercises we're going to go over, which is for this first one, this is a good segue. Is that it for that question? Okay. All right, so we'll segue right into that. That's a good segue. So we're going to get into strength, but we'll talk about body weight exercises first. Now, body weight exercises are exercises that only use your body weight as resistance. Push-ups, pull-ups, press-ups, whatever ups you can think of. Body weight squats, one-legged squats, all that kind of thing. There's all kinds of variations of these things. There's all different kinds of things that you can do. But they're the best things to keep in your repertoire. They're great for movement prep when you get good at them, and they're great for learning new skills. Let's first talk about the squat. And some people have been asking last time about the one-legged squat, or not the one-legged squat, the face the wall squat. And let me change the camera here. Boom. Okay, so I'm going to try to get into a spot where you can see more or less what I'm going to be doing here. Okay, so the face the wall squat, and I'll try to, so we've got this as the wall right here. Okay, now if you look down, you should be able to see, and I'm a little bit fish-eyed here, but try to ignore that. Anyway, what you'll try to do is you'll try to squat down here while staying in front of the wall, right? That's what keeps you, keeps you in frame. Your feet are only about a few centimeters away from the wall. They're a little wider than shoulder width, right? And as you go down, you're just going to reach between your feet to get that there. It's hard to do without a wall and still be able to see it. But there you go. Now, if you can't do that, if you can't go all the way down into a deep squat, which a lot of people can't, that's your first goal, right? And how you do that is you do a face the wall squat. And we've got another video which goes through a little bit more detailed instructions. We'll probably put on another one as well. You just pick a spot in your house, and every time you walk past it, do one, up and down. If you're trying to lose weight while you're doing it, I say do it in front of the refrigerator. Every time you go to open up the refrigerator, do one, boom, boom, right? Something where you have to do it over and over and over again, and you can get that repetition, but not the overuse of the particular joints kind of being used. So that would be one. That's one thing. The push-ups is another thing. If you can't do 10 push-ups perfect, right? Do as many as you can perfect. Do those as many. Like if you can only do 3 perfect, do 3. Periodically through the day, do 3, 3, 3, 3, or even do 1. Do 1 every time you think about it, right? So you know that 1 is perfect. It's absolutely perfect every single time. You do that for a couple of weeks, go back, try 10 again. You may be surprised. You're like, oh my God, I can push out 10, no problem, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that happens in our body that we're not aware of, right? There's limitations that we're not necessarily cognizant of. So when we pattern these things well. When we come back to them and try to put more repetition on them, they tend to get easier. So that would be that. As far as like lifting weights, like I do 2 types of things. Basically like a straight bar, we put the barbells on there like that, or a kettlebell. Do we have my kettlebell? I have my kettlebell here. So kettlebells are great because they've got the weight at the end of a handle, which is weighted like lots of things, right? And as far as what we do, these guys, they get a lot of stuff done. First of all, they're great for your grip, right? They're great for your shoulder here. And when you're doing your different exercises like the swing and all that kind of thing, they're going to be building things in a very natural kind of way, right? I love kettlebells. They're definitely, and I think most martial arts have adopted them by now, I believe. But for people who are starting out, if you get a kettlebell, just lift something with a handle. So it's like a bucket full of something, right? Tie a rope to a couple of milk cartons full of water, right? Any of those things can act as a kettlebell, right? Because as far as I can tell, probably the first kettlebell ever was just a bag of rocks. So that would be my advice on the strength lifting. Now, if you're doing the strength, here's what I was going to say. When I'm working on my deadlift, I keep it low. I keep those reps low, but I keep the weight high, right? So it's very close to my max, but I keep the reps so I can do perfect reps each time for that same reason, right? Also, take a hint from Russian power lifters, right? Take lots of rest between your sets. You don't need to do this. Don't build cardio at the same time you're building strength, right? build your strength, take lots of rest, right? Pull heavy weight, and all of that. And heavy weight is actually a little bit safer than lightweight because you can't cheat it. If you do it wrong, weight doesn't move as long as you keep it up at that threshold. That's where you're going to need a professional, if you don't know what you're doing, to figure out what is that threshold for you, right? And then they can dial that in and keep you safe. So that's my thing on kind of on strength.
So on a final note, we do have another YouTube question related to that.
Yes.
If you would not mind explaining the concept of a deload phase. Let's see, Larthotep. So I guess we're getting a little bit cosmogogic here. I notice more around the 6 to 8 week period of consistent training, I seem to experience some fatigue issues. So could you explain the value and how-to of a deload?
Okay, I think you're talking about a layoff, because that's what I would suggest there. If you're doing 6 to 8 weeks and that's a long time to be going at it, real hard. I would, after at least 6 weeks, take at least a 2-week break, right? Like I said, stay active, go hiking, go biking, go, swimming, all that kind of thing. But let your body adapt to what you've been doing to it, right? A lot of stuff happens when we sleep as well, right? People think that there's if you look on any of those cardio machines and it says fat burning zone, it's a lie, right? Your biggest fat burning zone is when you are asleep. So there you go. You want to burn more fat when you're asleep? Consume more oxygen when you're awake. That is literally the ratio that's going on there. Okay. Anything?
Chad,
Yep.
I'm curious, like some of the, I think that term deload is often referred to, like if I'm, for 5 weeks deadlifting quite heavy, then I will not change too much in terms of my exercise selection or even my sets and reps, but a deload phase, I'll drop to 75% of what I was doing in order to come back up. How does that compare to just being like, hey, cool, I'm going swimming for 2 weeks, or like a complete change of active recovery? I think deloading is a little bit like using the same exercises with much less weight, or 2/3 the weight, rather than doing some other kind of active recovery.
So I don't consider that an active recovery. That's actually just a method of strength building. And there's, oh God, what is it called? I've lost all of my vocabulary tonight. Anyway, so there's a couple of ways that you can build strength. One is the kind of ramping up, and then you go back down a little bit, and then you ramp back up again, and you kind of do this little step thing. Now, there's another way to build strength, which is more common amongst Olympic weightlifters and in Eastern Europe and places where sports science is far more a part of everything. And that's basically you stay at one weight for a very, very long time until it becomes easy, like just nothing, right? And then you actually go up a significant amount of weight after that, right? Again, when you're talking about, loading up, deloading, you're ramping up, ramping down, all that kind of thing, where you're doing that kind of undulation thing, you need somebody working with you, right? I'm not going to give that type of advice here because I can't. I don't know what you are. I don't know what your abilities are. I don't know what your capacities are, right? That's where you need to work with somebody. But for recovery, your layoff is your recovery thing, right? If you want to do other things, like if you're doing lots of kettlebell swings, right? And you're getting fatigued after that kind of thing, you can try switching over to a lower yield exercise like a get up, right? And just start doing get ups. So there's that kind of thing. But if you want the recovery aspect of it, really those layoffs are really, really important, because especially when you're building strength, and you're building muscle, you need to adapt to those new structures.
Now, personally, I'm a fan of applying general training methodologies across the board. So we're talking about this in the context mostly of strength training, but even in skills training, I think this can be useful. Building in regular periods for your training group to do something fun, possibly even silly, slightly out of the norm, to avoid burnout. Let your body recover a little bit, let your brain recover a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if people, when you reach training plateaus, that's another thing, right? We all get to those points where we keep grinding it out and nothing seems to be changing. One of the best things to do is just stop, walk away from it, do something else, focus on something else, come back to it. Right. But yeah, absolutely. It's something that we should all try to build into our classes and all of that kind of thing. Like you said, something fun, something silly. It's Star Wars. There's lots of stuff we can do, right? Right. Get out those Nerf balls, right? And start doing some blaster deflection, we've got these awesome, I think they're called Rhino Skin. They're these new dodgeballs for kids, and they're like a Nerf, but they're covered in this skin. Right. And you can they fly like nothing else. And you could they hit and you don't feel nothing. They're great. Those are great to play blaster deflection with, right? I come up with like tag games, lightsaber tag and all of that kind of thing for people to play and all of that. But yeah, keep it fresh, keep it everything like that. So, all right. So we've got two more things here that I wanted to touch on before we go, because they're very important here. Flexibility and cardio. Now, flexibility, I want to kind of put forth this idea. The flexibility is not so important as far as extensibility. Most people, when they think of flexibility, think of extensibility, right? Which just means like going into the splits, doing some position that is very extended or something like that. But that's not necessarily what flexibility means in an athletic sense. Flexibility is kind of a marrying and a relationship between your extensibility and your range of motion in your joint. There's a lot of things that go into this. A lot of times when people have a lack of flexibility, it's not a lack of extensibility, it's a lack of strength in the other side of that joint, meaning they cannot physically pull themselves into that position. A good example of this is hamstring stretches, right? So some people, they can't touch their toes or whatever. Almost always, and I've been in the business for quite some time, and this, I have not yet found a person who this is not true for. I'm not saying they're not out there, but I've never found one myself. If somebody can't touch their toes, more often than not, it is due to something like this. And I can switch cameras here quickly and demonstrate this a little bit better. Okay, so when I go down, if you watch my hips in relation to this little weapon here, right? When I go down, my hips have to go back. So I have to lean back. Now I'm nice and tall, so you can see that angle change, right? And I go down and come back up, right? Almost every single person I know who has not been able to touch their toes does something like this. Okay? Their hips don't move back far enough, right? What happens is once you start going here, your hips don't move back, you start to fall forward. So your body reflexively shortens this lever by bending your back. And now you're doing this, and now you're so far from your toes because your spine is all bent, right? So one thing you can do is you can help to strengthen and activate your hip flexors right here, right? You can do this by cueing. So if I tell people, I'll sometimes say, put your hands right where your hips meet your pelvis and pinch your hands between your thigh and your abdomen, like that. And you can bend your knees for that one because that's going to relate to your deadlift anyway. Now, when you want to get more flexibility in that standing position, you're like that. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Somebody who has this problem of bending the back when they're going down to touch their toes, they may be able to touch their toes when they're sitting down because they're in a different position and they don't have to remain standing, right? And then that always confounds people. It's like, I can touch my toes when I'm sitting down, but I can't when I'm standing up. If that's the case, then this is definitely the problem. There's all kinds of ways that you can fix that, right? You can put them on an incline, you can do this, but the fact of the matter is that it's not a problem with how flexible they are. It's a problem with how strong they are, or really how active their hip flexor muscles are, right? And there's, like I said, there's all kinds of stuff. So if one muscle doesn't contracts, the other one relaxes. So that's another thing that you can do. But don't go thinking that just because you can't get into the positions that you want to get into, you're not flexible. And that stretching will necessarily do anything for that. That's why you should just keep doing your squats, your body weight exercises, and focus on this range of motion. If you can't touch your toes, work on moving your hips back and all of that. If you want to make sure that you're not bending your back, take your Saber, put it in the small of your back, stand up straight. So now the Saber is touching between my shoulder blades, my tailbone, and my head. And then when I go forward, I try to keep all of those things touching. You see? Now, if I bend my back, that comes up. Okay, and then that can teach you, how it feels, right? So what you want to be, you want to make sure that that when you're dealing with your flexibility, you want to talk about your natural movements, and all of that. You want to get your splits. That's a separate thing. But for this kind of base level stuff, keeping those hips nice and loose is always very important. Anybody want to say anything about flexibility before we quickly hit the card?
Wanted to share my discovery with the lacrosse ball. This is from Tom Myers, the mesotherapist gentleman who invented something called anatomy trains. Essentially, every morning when I get up on my way to the espresso machine, I sit on my bed and I roll this on the bottom of my foot. And for some reason, massaging the bottom of your foot frees up the whole back line of fascia and muscle that are all connected, basically from your forehead through to the soles of your feet. And really, especially in the first thing in the morning when you're really stiff, like the difference between rolling down and trying to touch your toes first thing getting out of bed, and then doing 20 or so rolls on each foot with this and doing the same thing, it's a marked difference. So and it also, like, even if you don't bother to try and stretch on your way to the coffee maker, rolling your feet first thing in the morning feels great. And the cumulative effect, it's a little bit like one of those, every time I walk past the fridge, I do a squat, whatever, daily kind of building something into your routine. Just having one of these or several in different rooms in your house or at work, really, really, really helpful. But rolling the feet has been an enormous benefit for me, and I would suggest it to anyone.
I want to break in here real quick, and I would be very remiss if I was not to say this. So I will. Do not stretch. Do not bend your spine for at least an hour after waking. Okay. The reason for this is when you are asleep, your discs swell with fluid, right? And their viscosity goes down, right? So they start to slosh back and forth. So, and one of my mentors, Stuart McGill, who's one of the spine biomechanics I talk about here all the time, when they researched this, they found an enormous number of herniations happen in the morning when people are getting up, right? And that's the reason. So what I'll usually do is I do not do any of that kind of stuff. If you do a walk or you run or you do something kind of, bouncy, right? I have a Qigong which actually does bounce, right? So we sit there like that. And what that will do as you're walking around is that will decrease the viscosity, right? So it will make them more solid, and you'll run less of a risk of herniation and stuff like that. But as a professional, I have to say that's as a major safety issue. Don't bend your spine before an hour at least after you get up. There's a very
those like Chinese shaking and bouncing early morning exercises are actually tightening up the spine. That's really cool.
Right. Yeah. So basically that action of just going gets, just basically firms up those discs, gets all the muscles woken up, and all that, it'll feel a lot better. And if you're waking up with lower back pain, right, that's something that you're doing. They do not try to stretch that out. Right. Here's the other thing, as far as flexibility, and then we only got 5 minutes for cardio, but hey, what else? Cardio is supposed to be fast, right? I lost what I was about to say.
I'll jump in with a quick note. If anybody is experiencing chronic back issues and wants to learn more about these kinds of methodologies, which are all very much evidence-based, wonderful book out there called The Back Mechanic that you'll want to pick up.
Yes. Yep. I believe that's by Stuart McGill.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. Yeah, he's got the stuff. He's definitely got the magic. I've worked with him a lot. But yes, the back mechanic is an excellent thing. Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. You don't need to stretch your back, right? Your back doesn't need to be flexible, right? Unless you're a gymnast, and gymnasts pay a price for that back flexibility, especially if you're a fighter. You want this firm, right? Good. Get all the muscles around that there. All right. Do we have anything else on flexibility? I know I'm running out of time.
Sorry, Chad. I didn't realize there was a time limit. I keep talking. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no. We want people to talk. We'll go over a little bit. That's okay. We started late. Do we have any more questions on the interwebs?
Just some commentary that you're, depending on whose article you're reading, you can be 1 to 2 inches taller when you wake up in the morning. 2 inches seems a little extreme.
Well, I don't know how, I don't know about that, but
5'11" to 5'9".
I think it depends on how bad your posture is when you're awake. That's the thing.
Or like me, what convenience store you're running out of.
Yeah, right. Yes. All right. So let's quickly go into cardio. Cardio specifically for this stuff. So if you're looking to get into cardio, the type of cardio that's going to benefit you the most, like we talked about last week when we were talking about forms of getting the most out of your practice, is burst cardio. Going all out for a short period of time, stopping, recovering, and then doing it again. So the best way to do this is through sprinting. If you have, and you can sprint anywhere. If you're on, just go down your street, go between two points, try to get it about, start at 50 meters, or even smaller, 10, 20, you can build it up there if you don't have that thing. And then what you do is you'll run, let's say you're doing a 30-meter dash, right? Just arbitrarily picking that, right? So you pick that thing, you run as fast as you can for that meters, and then you stop, and then you just recover. You start your stopwatch for a certain amount of time. Usually I would stay starting at like around three minutes for recovery. And then you have to run back that same distance at the end of the recovery set, thing. Then as you get better, you can take down the time of recovery. So you're only recovering for a minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds. You can try, I'm going to do 3 sprints with 15-second recoveries between them. What that's going to teach your body how to do is to regulate your cardio in a way that we've been doing since prehistoric times. This is how we chased down animals that were so much faster than us, right? We would run after them, spook them, run them there, stop, walk back up to them, run up again, spook them again, and it would over time, many of them would get tired, would fall behind, and then you could pick them off, right? So there's that kind of training. That's exactly what you want to do for this kind of sport and this kind of activity, right? Because you're going to be going all at it, and then you're going to stop, and you have to recover in that time, right? And so that's that recovery time is really, really the aspect of it. You will get limited benefits from the long distance stuff. That has some benefits. Most of the benefits as far as fighting will give you is like, it'll help you push through the wall, right? That wall of like, oh, I can't do it. Just gotta, and that's really why a lot of fighters will do that. It's not because that's the type of cardio that you're going to get, or it's going to give you marked increases in endurance in the ring. It's that you're going to get used to just pushing through that wall, just going, do it anyway. So that's my little thing on the cardio. Anybody want else jump in here?
As a guy who is heavily bent toward cardio for some years now, I want to reiterate that we're talking about performance in this particular case. If you're looking for health and general wellness, the bulk of the evidence points to what's called zone 2 cardio, which is incredibly boring. And I encourage anybody who hates running to take up road bicycling. It's a lot more fun. You get to go like 35 miles an hour. But if you're talking about being better at sabering or some other sport, especially combat sport, yeah, you want that burst cardio.
Was it you last week who mentioned interval training as well?
Yeah, interval training can be thrown in there. Interval training is where you have it's related to what we were talking about with the periodization as well, and keeping things it's usually done now. You have like stations of either exercises or whatever, or apparatus that you spend a certain amount of time on, and then you go to the next one, you spend some time on that. And again, that recovery time between those two exercises can get smaller and smaller, as you go on. The interval way, it's another way to train that type of burst cardio, definitely. If you're using it for cardio, you can also use it for strength. So,
as a unrepentant cardio hater, I always try to use, like, I'll train some as soon as a skill becomes enough of a bubble that I can repeat without too much conscious effort, I'll then use that for cardio. So I don't know how familiar people are with these, but the little ghost steps in the Wudang Jian, which are these like fairly typical Chinese martial art footwork, followed by a little blast step that similar to soccer, like you just have these small accelerations. And so I'll set a timer and make a little sequence that I repeat for 2 minutes, take 30 seconds rest, do another 2 minutes, 30 seconds rest. And there, maybe I'll have the sword, maybe I won't, but I'm doing something that is a skill base that is also going to produce cardio because of the little blast effect that you're talking about, Chad, that kind of density of action in there. And that way I kind of get to do two things at once. And I hate running. God, I hate running. So
yeah,
I
always say that I learned how to fight, so I never had to run. That's how much I hate running. I'd rather fight.
right. I would also like try and substitute things. Like I love swimming, but it's the pandemic and we can't swim. So figuring out what these are, but there are any number, like just, doing a fancy footwork maneuver while doing accelerations with a timer, like the the timer, like I was holding up this lacrosse ball before, but like I feel like the most amazing thing we have in this fabulous modern world we live in is the timer, right? Like it allows us to turn anything into exercise.
Yeah. We had I saw,
So we have a few questions coming in. I'm gonna take them in order if that works.
yes, go ahead.
Our old friend Papa Sims asks, my workplace, I'm guessing that's like workout location, is rough terrain, rocky with mud and holes. Is there a burst type exercise that gives similar benefits to sprinting, but without risking my ankles?
Honestly, just moving through that terrain fast. You know, the fact, oh, I'll tell you, okay, so I've taught for the first time for 2 hours straight last Thursday, right? And I was teaching outside on a field. Okay. This is the first time I've been on earth for a year, right? It destroyed me. Just having the different levels of sod and the grass and the different textures and everything like that. My calves were on fire. My core was just dead. It was amazing. I had to stop. And I was like, you're going to have to give me a second here, you know? So having rough terrain, right, even though it does pose, that kind of problem, is, I mean, trail runners do it all the time. I would recommend, if you're on that surface, obviously be careful, but moving around on a really unstable surface is something that you have to do a lot of effort to just move around on. That takes a lot of work. But wear thin shoes, wear like Converse All-Stars or Keds or, Fayus or something that's, close to barefoot, because you're going to want to be able to, your feet are going to want to be able to do this. And that's going to prevent your ankle from turning. A lot of ankle turning happens because we have these huge, thick soles, which are like platforms, and they just, people just hit the ground wrong, and the whole shoe just buckles it over. So be careful, but, using that terrain as, just walking quickly through it, or doing something on it, working out in mud ain't no fun. That's for sure.
Perhaps also, okay.
Oh, no, please go ahead, Dave.
Oh, just imagining like once you know a little bit, like, okay, I can go from this rock to that tussock of grass, and I'll do 5 squats when I get there.
Right.
And then I'll go back. And like there are things that don't require locomotion that can contribute to intensity once you've mapped your area.
Oh, sure. Bit. Yeah. Just doing squats out on that stuff is gonna add something to it. But anyway.
If you're looking specifically for ballistic type exercises, I am a big fan of what they call 100 ups, which is basically a more technically sound version of running in place. And there are many variations on that it looks silly at first, but try it out and you will quickly get your butt kicked. Throw in the occasional burpee and the day is done.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to move on, we do have a couple more questions coming in here.
Let's try to get those, and then we'll.
Okay. So 2 from our friend Nyarlathotep. Is swimming good for cardio training? I think Daniel spoke to that a little bit.
Yeah.
And what are thoughts on simultaneous strength and cardio, like metabolic conditioning? Kettlebell lends itself well to this.
Well, yeah. So like there are exercises, like that's why I like kettlebell. Kettlebell swings are that kind of ballistic strength, right? The difference between those two strengths. So that's what I was talking about earlier before. Like you have your base strength, which is like doing your deadlifts, right? Perfect example, because deadlifts and kettlebell swings are using the same motor systems. So you have your deadlift, which you're lifting heavy, right? Boom, 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 right? But you're only doing that a couple of times. You take a lighter weight, like with the kettlebell, and you use that same motion to do something with the weight, right? Yes, you're going to get better. Now, the trick here is you want to be simple with it. People tend to take this idea and run way too far with it, right? And we've talked about it. It's like the weights on the baseball bat. The effect of swinging harder lasts for 15 minutes, and then everything returns back to normal. Doing a kettlebell is great because it's strengthening that fundamental pattern. Doing anything too specific, you're going to start to run into overuse threats, that way. So as long as you keep it, good, the best exercises for that are body weight exercises, right? Anything done on all fours, push-ups, press-ups, Spider-Mans, mountain climbers, bear walks, all kinds of, and any of that stuff where you're on all fours is really gonna hit that. And yes, swimming is good for cardio in the same way that cardio running is. But I would say that the biggest benefit people get from swimming and why they think swimming increases their cardio that much is because they learn how to breathe because they have to, right? Because you can't breathe underwater. So I shouldn't say that. You can't inhale underwater. So anyway, okay.
So that satisfies all of our YouTube questions.
Okay, very good. All right. Do we have anything else as we're closing here? Okay. Well, that's just a kind of a general overview. Hopefully, you'll get something out of that. You can reference this later. If you are running a group, right, and you're doing this, try to integrate some of this stuff into your class. Try to give some people some good fitness. But again, keep it simple. Don't get all kinds of craziness. Avoid spine bending. Spine bending is not really needed. Just keep everything, easy for people to understand and easy for people to do. And like with the wall squat, these are self-correcting exercises. So they're not going to do anything they can't do, right? You stand up somebody face to face with the wall. They're only going to go down as far as they can. And then they will stop. Same thing with the lifting the heavier weights. If you put a good amount of weight on there, if they're not doing it right, their body's not going to let them move it. So there you go. All right. Okay. So I guess that's it for all of us. Thank you, Ben, Jared, Desso, and Daniel for joining me this evening. We will see you probably next week. I know it's Memorial Day weekend. We'll see if we can't get something in the works. I know people are busy, but it's Sunday and hopefully people will be around. So we'll try to come back next week. Until then, have a good day. Patience, practice, perseverance, and happy sabering. All right.